Hello, welcome to Holy Trinity, where I'm joined today by a very special guest, Simon Butler, who is the incoming rector, who will be joining us on the 9th of January next year. Simon, it's very good to have you here. Welcome to Holy Trinity, welcome to the parish.
Thank you very much, Jonathan. It's really nice to be here, and this is a great way to begin to introduce myself to the many people who will wonder who on earth is Simon Butler.
Absolutely. Well, it's so good to have a bit of a chance to talk to you today. We, of course, wrote a parish profile right at the start of the process of recruiting you. And in that profile, we tried to set down a whole sort of vision of all the things that we are, all the things we do. And I wondered, as you read through that, what were the things that sort of jumped out at you about the parish of Holy Trinity and St Mary's, the things that really attracted you to wanting to apply and to be here?
Yeah, I mean, I was looking for a next appointment where I could bring the gifts and experiences that I'd gained over 30 plus years of ministry to what will probably be a final job. And as I was praying about that, I knew I wanted to do something that would stretch me, but also give me a really interesting context to work. And I'd always thought I wanted to work in a town centre. And so when the opportunity of this post, with many of the things that I love about churches, including, for example, a strong musical tradition that helped me as a worshipper to pray, gave me the opportunity to think about this place and this town, which I'd known a little when I was a young lad. I grew up in Alton, just down the road, so I used to come here on the day off, so I knew a little bit about the town. But also the fact that this was a parish that had a really fascinating history and had a place both in the life of those who worship here, but also clearly in the town and in the wider area. So that was really interesting. And then when I read the profile, not only was it extremely well written, so much so that I've actually given it to my current parish to help them think about what they want in their new incumbent. When I read it, what I particularly liked was it told me all about what was going on, but it didn't pigeonhole the new candidate saying, we wanted you to do this or that. It more said, we want you to be this sort of person who comes with this sort of attitude and might ask these sorts of questions and help us with that. So that really drew me in. I think the last thing I'd say is that I was looking for a place that could bring me joy and contentment. That was what my need in this time, which isn't to say I haven't been enjoying my ministry up to now, but that was quite an important thing. And so when I came and put faces to a story that had been told and was slowly sort of won over the interview day by the churches and the people I'd met and the school. So overall, when it came to the point where I'd had the interview and the bishop rang me to offer me the post, I was in a really good position to say, yes, I really want to do this job. This is the right job for me.
That's brilliant. That's so good to hear, because one of the things as we were writing the profiles I was a bit concerned about was we're writing all of these things and saying all the great things that are going on. And I was wondering how is a new person coming and looking at this going to feel? Can they fit themselves in? Can they see how this is going to nourish them? How they're going to sort of work with this huge program of things happening?
Yeah.
Sounds like you managed to find your way.
I think so. And every parish wants the Archangel Gabriel to be their next rector, and I'm not that. I'm sorry to have to disappoint you. Okay. I'm not the Archangel Gabriel, but there was enough of the things I care about and the things that are important to me and in the needs of the parish as well. So the underlying DNA of inclusion is really important to me, not just because it's fashionable, but because it's right at the heart of what I believe the gospel is about. But also, the style of worship and the outward facingness of the churches in their very different ways, but nevertheless, people who are communities that are facing towards the people and the communities around them.
Right.
That was really interesting.
That was one of the things I was going to ask you, actually. Obviously, there are two churches, and they are quite different in many respects. We've got the partnership with Guildford Methodists at St Mary's and all that goes on here at Holy Trinity. I wondered how you saw the two churches and which particular parts of the life of each were sort of appealed as you were looking at
I mean, it's really interesting that the two churches are in very different places in their life cycle in many ways, because there's this relatively new partnership with the Methodist Church at St Mary's, and this is a a smallish but growing congregation which is developing this real heart for outreach into the town, and is asking sort of what you might call apostolic questions about who does the church need to be in order to reach out.
Yes.
And that, I'm sure some of the missional energy of Methodism is part of that, alongside a sort of Anglican commitment to place and parish. Whereas here at Holy Trinity, obviously this is an extremely established and historic church that's had a long-standing relationship with the town.
Yep.
And that really interests me, the sort of, broadly speaking, the civic side, how we relate as a Christian community to the town in which we're placed. But at the same time, developing what you might broadly call spirituality and nurture, so that the church is so well placed in the town that it's so visible that people might be drawn in who maybe don't normally darken the door of a church, that they meet a community that is serious about its faith, serious about its God, serious about deepening that, and yet still wanting to welcome and include as many people as it possibly can.
That's really interesting, those two dimensions, the connection between Holy Trinity and the sort of civic centre of the town, the high street just outside, but also the importance to you then of the community here and wanting to sort of build the spirituality of the people within the church, and therefore equipping us to be able to do the work outside. Those two dimensions.
Yeah, and I think there's a hymn of George Herbert's which I love, King of Glory, King of Peace. 7 whole days, not one in 7. It's really important as Christians, particularly in our contemporary environment, that we are helped to be Christians by not just by our attendance at public worship, which is the DNA of a Christian's life, but also in our practice of the faith outside of that, in our families, in our workplaces, in our neighbourhoods, in our recreation time, and developing what you might call a spirituality that enables that isn't just about church, but is about life. Is right at the heart of what I think the gospel is about, and I think what the church is being called to be in the beginning of the 21st century.
That's really exciting, because it's all about sort of the whole roundedness then of a Christian discipleship, and it's how that works out in community within the church, how it works out outside as well, and all of that you want to pick up on everything that goes on here. We know that at the moment you're the vicar of St Mary's in Battersea. Many of us don't know very much about St Mary's Battersea, so tell us a bit about all that goes on there.
Well, you will have heard probably of Battersea Dogs Home, of course, which actually is Battersea Dogs and Cats Home, I have to say now. Although that's not in the parish, if you think about that strip of the River Thames that runs from sort of Vauxhall down to where the helicopters take off, that's my patch, Battersea Park. And the church there's been a church there since 800 AD, so it's a very ancient site. Sits right on the riverbank, so the north side of my churchyard is the River Thames. And when I stand at the altar on a Sunday morning and look down through the glass doors of the vestry, I can see the river going up and down. Whereas it's here I look down and I see a few people passing by on their way. But here we are on a high street as well, where lots and lots of people go past. But St Mary's is not dissimilar to that, smaller, very similar in its tradition, so big musical tradition, not as big as here, but certainly very much committed to the same style of worship and the same sort of inclusive vision. And again, if you go into St Mary's Battersea, and I encourage you to do so if you find yourself in that part of London, you'll look around the gallery of the church, and all around there are these tributes to honouring people who, over the centuries, since about 1700, have left stocks or money to the church to serve the community. And so when you sit there in church and praying, or when visitors come, they see all the names of the people and how they've served the community. And that's very much part of what I've felt it was right for me to be doing, and certainly what they asked me to do when I came there 12 years ago. And that came to its own, particularly in the pandemic, where we had all these established relationships with local organisations, and we were well placed just to hit the ground running, and we did an extraordinary job as churches in partnership with other organisations
That's really
through
great. So
that.
you were able to kind of build on relationships you'd already established because community engagement is so important to the church.
And whilst, there were some people who were arguing about whether it's right to keep churches open or not,
Yes.
we were actually in the business of just getting food out of the door and delivering prescriptions and that sort of thing. And still we're asking those questions, but they were tempered by the opportunity to serve people.
And the ability to make the connection and do some things. That's really, really interesting. Prior to St Mary's Battersea?
St Mary's was, coming here will be my 4th parish as an incumbent. After I trained in Winchester Diocese as a curate and then came to London. But all of my vicaring has been in the Diocese of Southwark, south of the river. So I served as an incumbent in Streatham, just at the bottom of Streatham Common for 7 years. Which was a fascinating and rich time. And then I went to a more challenging role in a place called Sanderstead in South Croydon, which was a much more stable suburban community, a high proportion of older people. Someone said to me once, "You'll do a lot of funerals here," and I did do a lot of funerals. But it was also a place that was wanting to change, and we did some work on that together. And then I went to Battersea in 2011.
Brilliant. So 12 years in Mass.
Yeah. And I always say, people say, how long have you been a vicar? And I always say, I became a vicar the day before Tony Blair became Prime Minister.
Right, okay, there we are. That's a good sort of moment to sort of just focus on and say, right, that was when it all began in terms of the ordained ministry. Brilliant. I'm now going to ask you, Simon, one of those standard interview questions, the sort of thing people always like to ask. When we get to your first 100 days here, what might we expect to see? What sort of things will you be engaging with first? How will you prioritise things? What will we see going on, do you think?
Well, I think at the heart of my approach to being a parish priest, I used to do external examining for ordinands, people training for the ministry. I examined their mission projects. And one of the things they would always talk about is something that the theologians call Missio Dei, the mission of God, which is the idea that God is already at work in a parish or in a place. So your job as a pastor and as a church is to find out what God is doing and join in with it. So what I want to do in my first 100 days is find out what God is doing at Holy Trinity and St Mary's, in our neighbourhood. What are the challenges? What are the opportunities? To build some of those relationships, because all of this is built on good relationships and listening and learning and hearing what people care about. But in terms of the specifics, I'm not too sure yet, because obviously that will be discovered in the process. I think an early thing I'll want to do is open the church for prayer. At the moment, and it's been that way, I know, here for some time. You're saying your prayers online in the morning, and that will carry on, but I think I'll want to come in, open the church doors and join online from in church, so that people who want to can come in and pray as well. So I think that will be a very early thing, but apart from that, it'll be softly, listen and learn. There'll be...
When we were chatting earlier, you were saying about the importance of listening to members of the congregations, wanting to hear their spiritual journeys, and that whole sort of filling in that whole picture of the people you're coming to serve alongside.
Absolutely, We're not great as Christians, particularly as Anglican Christians, I think, about talking about the deepest things in our lives, and to find ourselves a bit of the language without becoming, the stereotype embarrassing Christian, the one that always gets avoided at parties.
Yes, absolutely.
I think there's something in that to give us more confidence in not just why we believe something, but our ability to say very naturally what it is about our faith that is important to us.
That will be very good. I know that people here will be very happy to sort of have those conversations, to come and find you in the church, in the rectory, wherever it may be, and to have those discussions and start finding out about you and you hearing from us as well. Now I'm going to ask you a few less chunky questions. A few slightly less formal things. So, You're in the car, you're going somewhere, you decide to listen to the music. Radio 1 or Radio 3?
Radio 3 for me.
Okay.
I ever since, I come from a pretty humble background, but my mother was used to sing in the Amateur Opera Dramatic Society. I was taught to play the piano from age 8, and I developed a love of classical music from then. And whilst if Radio 1 or Radio 2 is your thing, if you get in my car and the radio comes on, it'll be Radio 3.
Excellent. I suspect that answers my next question, which is going to be have a big night out in London.
Yep.
Opera or ballet?
It's going to be opera. My partner Paul is a ballet lover.
Okay.
I go occasionally with him and wonder what on earth is going on the stage, and occasionally he comes to the opera with me and wonders what all the fuss is about.
Likewise, right?
So whilst we, that's the way I go, and I shall carry on occasionally going up to town for that. And I know there's a very lively cultural life here in Guildford as well to throw myself into as well.
Lots to discover, absolutely. Yeah. Sitting at home in the evening in your favourite chair, poetry or a novel?
Probably a novel,
okay.
But poetry has become increasingly important to me. And some incorporating some of that in worship as well, because poetry has this way of coming at things in a very different way to the way we normally do. But no, I tend to read novels. I have a balance between something chunky, and then some crime fiction.
Excellent, very good, brilliant. Holiday time, countryside or the beach?
Probably more the countryside.
Okay.
So we like to walk. We particularly love the Highlands of Scotland. But that doesn't mean to say the occasional bit of winter sun somewhere like the Canary Islands, where you can guarantee some sun in February.
Absolutely.
Not, I have to say, this coming February, because it'll have only just started.
Right.
Just
so
get that one out there.
Things to do.
A few things to do in the first months. So that.
Very good. Yeah. Great. Now, out for a meal in the evening, starter or dessert?
Dessert for me. I've got a bit of a sweet tooth.
Sweet tooth, brilliant, very good. Red or white wine?
Well, it depends really, doesn't it? What's on the menu for a start, and probably what time of year it is. So red in the winter and white in the summer.
That sounds a pretty good way to go to me. Brilliant, very good.
Beer if it's curry.
Aha, right.
Beer if it's curry.
Beer if it's curry, splendid. So as we look forward to the 9th of January, Simon, and all that lies ahead, I wonder if there are things you'd like us to pray for, to bear in mind, to be thinking about as we prepare for your arrival.
Yeah, well, thank you. I think you'll appreciate, as you've not long ago said goodbye to someone, that there's some saying goodbyes to do before the excitement of new beginnings. So I'm in the process of saying goodbye to the people and community of Battersea, and that's always a challenge, to say goodbye to people, some of whom you aren't going to keep up with, inevitably, with the large number of people you meet. So there's a few more weeks of that to do yet. And then I'm hoping to move in mid-December. So I look forward to, settling down in that. And then really, I think in terms of praying for the beginning, pray that it will be a good welcome, that we will all feel at home with each other fairly quickly, and that we pace ourselves. Right. That's really quite important. I know every parish thinks, the new rector's here, we're going to crack on. But there's a lot to learn, and there's a lot of people to get to know. I've just seen the guest list of the induction.
Right. Okay.
So I know that there's a lot of people to get to know. So some pacing, and hopefully within the first 6 months, I'll have got to know a lot of people. I can't promise I will remember your name on the first occasion. Right. We'll have to think of some plans to help me with that. But that's a good start, a good transition, and a future that brings blessing to this parish and to us as well.
Absolutely. And I think for our part, we will be praying very much that we come to you as we are, and that you will meet us as we are in all the different activities that go on, in the different people we are in the two communities at St Mary's and the Holy Trinity. And together we will encounter one another, encounter God, and build the future here.
So my plea is be yourselves, because I will be. I shall try and be that. I try not to be the central casting vicar, all of that. But let's be ourselves and see us as we are, and I'm sure that will be a great basis on which to build our common journey together for the next period in the life of this parish.
Simon, thank you so much. It's been so good to talk to you
Pleasure.
today. Thank you very much for being with us as we've got to meet our new rector, and we look forward so much to the 9th of January and all that lies ahead. Simon, thank you very much.
Thank you. I look forward to meeting you all very soon.